Hi, I'm Chris Sarandon, and welcome to Cooking by Heart, where we revisit the vivid memories of the food we grew up with and the people and the stories attached to that time in our lives. Today, I'm obviously coming to you from the Sacred Heart University Community Theater in beautiful downtown Fairfield, Connecticut. And my guest today is actor, writer, producer Jonathan Stark. Stark created the sitcom According to Jim, which ran on the ABC network for 8 seasons. Previously, he was a writer-producer on Ellen, where he received both the Emmy and Peabody Awards for co-writing the groundbreaking Ellen's coming out episode, The Puppy Episode. He was also a writer on the series The Drew Carey Show, Cheers, and The Bob Newhart Show. And Stark also acts, having been seen in the films Project X, House 2, and, of course, the original Fright Night. He's an alumnus of the LA improv group The Groundlings and is currently a member of 3 other improvisational ensembles. I'm very, very happy to introduce my friend on screen and in real life, Jonathan Stark. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, Chris, I'm going to get a T-shirt made with my resume like that on there, my bio, because I just love it. I love listening to it.
I do too, but make 2 of them, okay?
I will do.
It's a deal. It's a deal. Yeah. So as you may or may not know, I think you do know, that we talk about food and memory on this show. And one of the things I always try to get into originally is family and where you came from. You're from where?
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Born and raised?
Until I was about 26, I came out to San Francisco. I was in Erie. We used to, I love Erie. It's a great place. We had names for it, though. We called it the Mistake on the Lake or the Gateway to Cleveland. But it really is a great town.
And similarly, I came from a smaller town. Erie's a fairly good-sized city, right?
Yeah, I think it's the 3rd largest city in Pennsylvania, actually.
Oh, wow. I had no idea it was that big.
Yeah.
And what was your family's business when you were there? What did your father do, your mother?
My dad was an insurance salesman. My mom was a homemaker. My brother was, I was kind of like I don't use a mistake, I use an accident, because my brother was 15 years older than me. And my sister is 9 years older than me. So my mom had me when she was 46.
Unusual for that time.
Yeah. Oh,
also. Yeah,
very unusual.
Very unusual.
Yeah.
And was your mom, for want of a better way of describing it, Susie homemaker? I mean, she was very, very much into making life in the home comfortable for everybody?
Well, she did some cleaning. We had a person that would come in once a week and do the cleaning, and she would do the cooking.
What was it? Because let's get to the nub of things here. What was the cooking like around your house?
The cooking around my house was basically, let me preface it by saying I am the opposite of probably you and probably a lot of the people that watch this. I'm not a foodie. When I go visit somebody in a hospital and I see any food left over, I go, "You gonna eat that?" That's kind of my I'll eat whatever.
Right.
And I don't do a lot of cooking. I go over to the supermarket, get a salad, and I'll fix myself turkey burgers, stuff like that.
Right.
But my mother was a wonderful cook with baked goods, and she made amazing baked goods. To this day, I still it's my, Achilles heel is baked goods. But she also did really well with meat and potatoes kind of stuff. But boy, it comes to vegetables, she just boiled them. That was it. She just boiled it. I remember thinking there must be a better way to make vegetables, even when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I used to have to sit, at the table. I was one of those kids who had to sit there until I finished what was on my plate.
Yeah. This is not unusual for people in our age range.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I had a little thing. I lived next door to a vacant lot with lots of trees and bushes and stuff. And after they would leave the table and go in and watch TV, I just wrap up the food and heave it out the back door into the lot. So I was
threw it away.
It was a win-win. It was win for me and win for those animals that were probably, creeping around the lot looking for overboiled parsnips.
God.
Yeah.
So fresh vegetables were not at a premium when you were growing up?
We had a garden.
Oh, you
similar
did?
to the one you have, not
Yep.
quite as big, but it was pretty good size. And we had fresh peas and tomatoes and zucchini and lots of different stuff. But for some reason, I didn't want fresh peas. I liked the canned ones. Why? I don't know. I
I
don't
understand.
anymore.
Well,
but
probably because they were adulterated in some way, and that flavor is just
they had a little sugar in them. Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
So the typical meal at your house, especially around dinner time, was the main course was meat.
It was always some kind of meat, some chicken, but usually potato. My mom was Irish, German, Scottish heritage, so there was kind of that whole thing. But I do remember one specific thing was that she would make tongue. Now, I assume a lot of people watching this eat tongue. You go to a deli, you get tongue, they slice it up, they put it on a sandwich. Well, my mother never sliced it up. She just put a big honking tongue on the table. And I'd have to sit there and look at it, and it'd be like, oh my God, I got to eat this.
It's interesting because tongue has kind of gone out of fashion. When I was growing up, same thing. There were tongue sandwiches at my dad's restaurant. We had tongue at home. I avoided it assiduously. I just hated the idea.
Yeah.
But it was like one of the principal kind of sandwich meats that was around, especially in, I think, working class towns. And my hometown, Beckley, West Virginia, was it was a coal mining town. And so cheaper cuts of meat, and particularly of sandwich meat, that kind of thing. We didn't have sliced turkey. It was essentially, it was tongue or salami or, something that had been highly processed.
Right. And I know Beckley. Remember, I told you, I spent a semester at a Beckley Community College. So I know Beckley.
That's right. Yeah. Beautiful town.
It is. Very beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what was it like around the dinner table since you had older siblings? Were they gone by the time you were
They were gone. Yeah, they were gone. My sister was gone by the time she was 9 years older. So she went to college at 18 and I would have been 9. And at the same time, when I was 9, my father passed away. So it was my mother and me, and then my grandmother came to live with us. So it's basically my grandmother and my mother and I at the table. And, I was one of those kids in the neighborhood. All I wanted to do was get on my bike, stay outside until it was dark. So I'd eat so fast just to get out of there and get on my bike. And, we had a couple more hours of daylight left.
Right.
So to this day, I still eat fast. I shovel it in.
I'm just the opposite. I used to eat very slowly when I was a kid. And I don't know if you were the same, but I would pick things apart on my plate.
Oh, God.
If there was celery in the food, I would always separate the celery. And I'd also eat things in a kind of rotation so that I finished equally all the way around the table. I didn't eat one thing up because I liked it more.
Yeah.
I'd eat a little of the potatoes, then I'd eat a little of this, and then I'd eat a little of that. So that by the time, I was very OCD when I was a kid.
Oh, well, my youngest daughter is very similar to that. Nothing can touch still. She's 26 almost, and that's the way she eats.
Now I just slop it all together.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Well, why not? It all goes to the same place, as they say, right?
Right. Was there a lively conversation at the table?
No.
I shouldn't call it lively.
She was my mother and she was my grandmother, and we got along fine, but it wasn't like we had sparkling. Well, I mean, I couldn't talk about I couldn't talk about Nixon and the Vietnam War. My God, they were Republicans, and I was kind of a hippie at the time. So as I got older, so that was verboten. I couldn't do that. We talked, but the times I do remember that were really great is Christmas dinner and Thanksgiving dinner.
Holidays, yeah.
Yeah.
What were they like?
They were. My great uncle would come in from out of town. My grandmother would be there. We had a big dining room table, and it was full. And my mom would really just make everything. And with Thanksgiving stuff, there's not a lot that you can boil that you can ruin. It's mostly just stuffing and turkey and mashed potatoes, and those little pearl onions, which I can still remember. But my one thing was, I think it was for Christmas, I always had to eat until I got sick to my stomach. And that was my thing. It was like a tradition with me. And then I'd go lie in the living room going, oh. So I don't know why. I don't do that anymore. But
right. The table, it wasn't only the table that was groaning, it was you.
It was, yeah. They were all still in there, and I was just like ready to throw up.
Any unique events that occurred on holiday dinners? I mean, was it a calm time usually at holidays, or was it a?
Oh yeah, it was fun. I mean, we had when my dad was alive, and then even after that, we had the holidays were good. Christmas was great. We had a tree, and I would put up the lights, and yeah, we would have it was a good holiday. I still love Christmas, my favorite time of year. What
was your favorite meal at home?
Oh gosh.
Snack. Was there something that stood out to you that you look forward to?
Well, my mom used to make this thing. I don't know if they still make it, but they had like the Oreo type wafers. They didn't have the stuff inside. They were just the wafers. And she'd put them together with some kind of whipped cream stuff. Oh my God, they were good. I mean, I would plow through that stuff, and and I was like thin as a rail.
Did you guys ever go out?
No, not in. Never. You didn't really go out in Erie in the 60s and early 70s. In fact, my mom, for some reason, had this vendetta against pizza. She hated it and would never order it. So I never had pizza until I came out to San Francisco, and never had a bagel, because Erie, doesn't have a lot of bagel places. No. They may now, but back then they didn't.
So where did, out of this kind of, your father having passed away, you're with your mom, your grandma, and your sister was gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were in a house of women.
Absolutely.
Essentially. Where did the performing happen? How did the performing happen?
Well, first I would say I was in a house of women. I always tell this to Linda, and I say, I have 2 daughters. So I said, I think I'm being paid back for something. But the performance came from this. I was in a thing, in junior high school called the Mill Players, and we did, Anything Goes, King and I, and all that stuff. We did all the musicals, and we did 2 weekends. But the most fun was we pitched in and built sets, painted sets. It was a great camaraderie thing. I was never one of the leads because I didn't have the voice for a musical.
Yep.
But I remember one specifically when we did The King and I was one of the guards who would come out the side of the stage, and whenever the king was there, I'd have to stand there like this, and I had the turban on and the diaper and
were you
and all the basically, and all they make up my whole body with this dark makeup.
Ooh.
And one day the director calls me and goes, or we were in there, and goes, okay, I'm going to have makeup on your body, but you can only wash your face because we're almost out of makeup. So for a week I had to wear this that was coming off of my clothes. You know what makeup's like. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. We used to use something called Texas dirt. I don't know if that's familiar to you. You came in a can, and you had to wet a sponge, and then you spread it all over your body if you were playing a swarthier, darker person.
Yeah.
And I remember my first job, equity job, was at a theater in Maryland when I was in graduate school, and I was the only non-ethnic person in the play. And the girl who was playing opposite me was very fair-skinned, and she was covered with Texas dirt, and I was a sailor, and I had a white sailor outfit on. And every time we would come into contact with each other, my entire body was covered with Texas dirt on stage. I mean, it was, and she refused to powder it down. She refused to do anything.
So you had some laundering to do every week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, thank God I was in equity theater. I didn't have to do the laundry.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So anyway, so you're doing plays at school.
Yeah, and I did that.
Any kind of improvisation?
No, never did improvisation. I I did some plays at school, and then I stopped because I thought, and once I got into high school and stuff, I stopped. I didn't think it was ever going to be a career for me. And then I went to college, and I was getting a degree in art education to teach kids. And I realized as a student teacher, I really hated it. So I didn't want to be one of those teachers who was teaching kids and not into it.
Yep.
It's not fair to the kids.
Yep.
And I started hanging out with the theater crowd. And, the theater crowd's the best. I mean, they're the most interesting, funny, great people ever. So I was just loving it. So after I graduated, I was kind of just hanging around going, I don't know, I guess I'll be a substitute teacher, but I don't really want to be. A friend of mine said, hey, at the college, they're doing, 1776. And there's an open spot. Somebody just left. You could walk right into it if you wanted to, because he knew I had done some acting. And I said, okay. So, the moment I went back on the stage, I said, I love this.
That was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, as an actor, and anybody listening to this as an actor that loves what they do, the stage is home. And
that the profession itself is a calling.
It is.
It's not something that is, at least in my case, and I have a feeling in yours, and a lot of people that I know, particularly my generation, that it's not about becoming famous.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about the thing that you do. It's about the process itself.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of kids are the dang kids today. They just want to get famous. But that's true. A lot of kids, it's just about being famous. And you go, well, good luck if you want to be an actor. I mean, that's few and far between. Just love the craft and try and keep working and make a living. So for the transition from the college thespian to improvisational comedy, how did that happen? I went out to San Francisco and I took a class. There was a thing called the Stage Group Theater. A guy named Wendell Phillips. He worked at the group theater. He was part of the group theater. Mm-hmm. And I started taking these classes. I took acting classes for about 2 years in San Francisco. And all of a sudden this guy comes in and he had worked with the committee. And they said, oh, he's teaching in an improv class. Do you want to take it? And I said, absolutely. I would love to take it. I've never done it before. And so I took this one class and that was it. And I moved down to LA. I'm going to be an actor. And I was living in this, in a room in somebody's house. And I really wanted to get out on my motorcycle. All I had was a motorcycle. And I was driving up and down Sunset. And all of a sudden you hear, hey, John Stark. I'm like, I don't know anybody in LA. So this guy I knew, Chuck, and we did taking this improv class together. He says, hey, I'm doing a class over at a place called the LA Connection. And I said, okay, why not? I'm not doing anything else. So I took the class, and I had a wonderful teacher, a guy named Taylor Negron, who is a wonderful actor. And I got hooked, and I still have the friends I started with, most of them today. And the improv companies that you're with now, essentially a lot of the same people? Some of the same people. I'm not with any specific group. I'm with one called the Transformers, and we've been performing together, 5 guys since '92. Oh, wow. Yeah. And then there's the Groundlings. Once in a while I do shows for them. And then I do a thing called Immediate Theater with a guy named Dan Castellaneta. I don't know if you know Dan. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. The Simpsons and you name it. Homer Simpson. Yeah. And he and his wife do this workshop, and I love doing it. It's really my passion. I found it really interesting because my first equity job was with a small theater company in Washington, D.C., and a lot of what we did was the guy who ran the company had trained with Viola Spolin. And so we played a lot of theater games just on our own when we had spare time. And we also did plays in the schools to support ourselves. And then at night, we did experimental plays. And then the last part of the evening, we did improv with the audience. And there's something about that kind of training where you're literally figuring it out on your feet that really stands you in good stead as an actor, because in acting, the important thing is to stay in the moment.
And that's what improv forces you to do. You can't think ahead. You have to be there then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people always ask me any advice for starting actors. And I say, yeah, go start taking improv classes. You don't have to be in a company, but just start learning it, because I think it's the best thing that I ever learned.
And I think it's not unusual when you think about it that so many of the people who have come out of improv and become big stars, quote unquote, have had that kind of training, and it works really well for you when you're working in movies, particularly when you're working in movies and television.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I auditioned for Fright Night, I think you've probably heard this story, but I auditioned for that. The scene I auditioned was the one with Detective Lennox,
right?
And all the stuff of doing this and going woo, and then that wasn't there.
Yeah,
I just put it in because I thought, well, what the hell, I want to. The idea is to throw the detective off, not be menacing. That any detective would go, hold on a second. So I thought, just throw him off and try and make Charlie seem like he's an idiot. So that was my take on it. I guess Tom liked it.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea that you are pursuing an objective, pursuing an action, rather than you're playing a scene,
right,
makes all the difference in the world, because it not only gives the actors. Well, anyway, we won't get into shop talk, because I want to get on to how then the transition happened from your performing to your writing, because you became a very successful writer.
I was performing and I was doing stuff, and it'd been a while, and I was going out for smaller parts, and I thought, yeah, I can do it. But a friend of mine, Bill Steinkellner, and his wife Sherry were running Cheers, and they said, you guys should write. You should be a writer. And I said, well, I don't write. And they said, well, you improvise, so you write. You write on your feet. So I grabbed my partner, Tracy Newman, who is Lorraine's sister, and I said, she's a founding member of the Groundlings, and I said, let's write some stuff. Let's see what we can do. So we wrote about 4 scripts and sent them out with no luck. And one day I just called up Sherry to say we wanted a phone number for a friend. And she said, you guys still writing stuff? I said, yeah. She said, send me a script. So we sent her a Murphy Brown. And 2 days later, she calls up and she goes, you guys want to be on Cheers? We're like, wow. Yeah. But it was scary because these writers were amazing. And Jimmy Burrows was in. Yeah.
So talk about the writers in that room.
Yeah, there was Jimmy Burrows and Ted would always come in, and the Charles brothers, and you had Tom Anderson and we'd have David Lloyd in there. He'd come in once a week, and Bob Ellison, and these guys were champs. I mean, they were the best. So, of course, we were terrified because we didn't have any class of now they have classes of well, what's it like to be in a writer's room? We didn't have that. So we had to learn on our feet. It was like free year of college, really.
With the best.
Oh, with the best. Absolutely.
With the best.
I mean, yeah. And we learned that you can write a TV show and be out by 7 or 8 o'clock unless you've got major problems. I mean, a lot of TV shows go till midnight. And when I was on Drew Carey, they said, well, the magic doesn't happen till after midnight. And I was like, no, my magic's way gone by then.
Speaking of food, let's jump back there for a second.
Yeah.
Was there a difference, because you were on a lot of successful shows? Have you ever been on a show that was not as successful, something that sort of died on the vine?
I did. Was
there a difference in the catering?
Well, yes, I think that's true. It depends on their budget. Now, Drew Carey used to have 3 turkeys, 5 pies. I mean, they'd have 4 big tables on show night.
Right.
This had 1 half table with just snacks.
Right. With pre-wrapped candy and that
yes.
sort of thing. Yeah.
I was on a show called Hardball, which was about baseball. Dan Florek was on it. Joe Rogan, Allie Wentworth, Bruce Greenwood. I mean, it was a great cast. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of problems. Not writing. The writers were great. It was just a lot of problems with Fox. But I remember we were having trouble getting audience because it was a live show. And all of a sudden, they bring the audience in, and it's kind of quiet, and I'm noticing there's not much laughs. And I said, "What's with the audience?" And they say, "Oh, they're from a prison." And I said, and they actually had leg chains on, and somebody had to say, "Can you keep the chains a little quiet?"
Oh, that's a new one, I must say.
Yeah, yeah.
But the sitcom process itself, to me, is fascinating because I know that I've guest starred on a couple of shows. I did one, Love and War. I did a pilot for Gene Reynolds. Do you remember who Gene Reynolds was?
I do. Yeah,
one of the creators of MASH.
MASH. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amazing guy. The pilot that never got picked up. And there's something about that familial thing that happens when you're doing a show, not a show that's filmed out on locations, but something that's in a room, in a studio.
Yeah.
And that's shot with either three camera, it's either three camera or one camera, whatever it is. But
right.
that has a real sort of unique feeling to it.
Yeah, well, it's like doing a play every Friday night.
Yeah.
Because you usually do it in order, and you got the audience, responding, hopefully. So it's got that real feeling of those of us who love theater. It's just like it, really. I mean, you don't have the proscenium, but you have all the things laid out and the audience right in front of it.
And I think a lot of times the people who work best on those shows are people who either have theater experience or those who have stand-up experience.
Stand-up's an interesting thing. It can either be really good or really a problem. I mean, my feeling was always, and I would tell when I was doing, according to Jim, I'd always say, Jim, don't worry about the jokes, just act the scene. If the audience isn't laughing and you're acting a scene, then that's our bad. We'll fix that. But you hit a joke too hard sometimes, and you're actually kind of ruining the joke. You just got to play it normally.
Yeah.
So, and he was usually pretty good about that.
Yeah. If you see it coming, then you're not playing the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was good about it. I mean, he would go back and you say, "Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. So I'll play it a little more subtle." I'm a big believer in subtlety in both acting and comedy. Anything basically you're doing for an audience.
Absolutely.
Well, not on stage maybe, but for when you're close up.
Even to a certain extent on stage, it depends. Depends on the kind of the genre.
Right.
Was there? Are you still in touch with any of the people that you work with on either Jim or any of the previous or subsequent shows?
Yeah, I'm in touch with a lot of the writers. I mean, I don't see them that often, but yeah, I mean, one of the writers on a guy named John Beck on According to Jim, he actually, when my daughter was going to prom, my oldest daughter, he came by with his car, put on a chauffeur's hat, and drove her to prom and picked her up. I mean, we're all good friends. I mean, I don't see everybody, don't keep in touch with everybody, but I keep in touch with a lot of people from Ellen and a few people from Cheers. So, yeah, I mean,
It's interesting how chemistry either occurs or doesn't occur in a cast. John and I, for those of you listening who may not know it, we're both in a movie called Fright Night, which has a kind of cult following that's kind of developed over the years. And we are all still, when we see each other, we fall back into almost the same pattern of friendship and particularly of laughter that occurred when we were on the set. And we had a great time doing it. And I think that's part of what kept the friendships enduring. And also the personalities of the people. And there's no way to plan that. The cast either has a chemistry or it doesn't.
I always talk about the fact that the thing I remember most on Fright Night was how much we would laugh. A lot of my scenes were with you and Billy Ragsdale. And we would sit there, they have the stand-ins come, but then you always got to come in and there's always a few last minute adjustments. You got 5 minutes or so. And we just sit there and laugh. And I remember Tom would go, "Come on, you guys, come on, we got to do this now." We go, "Oh yeah, okay, got our serious faces on." But almost every scene there that you were serious when I was in the scene, 5 seconds before the start of that, you were laughing.
Yeah.
So that's why you're a good actor. You can just put it on and take it off. And that's what I think is great about actors.
And the particular chemistry of this group of people has endured for a long time. I know that it's something that I cherish. Really.
Oh, me too. And Amanda is hysterically funny. Stephen is funny, but will also likes to just be part of it and listen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Bill Ragsdale is one of the funniest human beings I've ever met in my life.
Don't say that. He's going to get a big head now, and he's going to write me and say no.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to conclude with a question that I almost ask. I ask everybody.
Okay.
What's the strongest, most vivid memory you have growing up that has to do with food, but not necessarily the food itself? It can be about the food, but a person that's associated with it. I know that, for instance, when I grew up in my dad's restaurant, there was a guy who was the kind of major domo of the restaurant. He was kind of a host, and he was Lebanese, and he had a very sort of a strong Middle Eastern accent, and he had the shape of a bowling ball, literally, and he was constantly doing a Groucho Marx with his eyebrows at every woman who walked into the restaurant. That's what I'm looking for. Is there anything like that that's occurred in your life that you just hearken back to and go, oh yeah?
I do. I can remember, and I was quite young. My dad was alive at the time, and we would go to church every Sunday. And after church, we would always go to a place called the Erie restaurant, and their specialty was lobster. And we'd always have a meal. And my mother told me, I said, oh, that sounds like fun. She goes, yeah, it wasn't so much because every time I'd look over, you were gone and you were at somebody else's table going, can I have some of that? But those were the kind of places, like, they had great food. They're gone now. A lot of those places are gone, but they had great food.
Well, John, I want to thank you so much for having this chat with us today. It's been a real pleasure. It was entertaining, enlightening, and above all, it was straight from the heart, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Well, always great to see you and talk with you and talk food. I'm sorry I'm not more of a foodie, but that's
sort of beside the point.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay.
Take care, and thank you, John Stark.
Thank you, Chris.